got into this profession, you know, where he's been, his journey right up to there, and how we can look out for, you know, just a couple of pointers from him on how we can come up to also become software engineers, great software engineers like he is. That's Providence Mtsweni. Providence, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Levan. Just gonna quickly open up my camera. Hope everyone can see me. Thanks for such a beautiful intro. And yeah, I'm glad to be here. I see there's a lot of familiar names that I'm seeing here. And yeah, I'm grateful actually for this opportunity to share with everyone my journey, how I got into Snowed. And yeah, so basically for today's presentation, I chose to like switch it up a bit because I do understand that um, the hackathon, the 2020, what is it, 2025 Security Summit Hackathon is around the corner. And I also wanted to use this opportunity to basically share some security tips and tricks that you can use when it comes to building your software and whatever it is that you're going to be doing at the hackathon, basically employing a security mindset when it comes to working in the hackathon and doing your challenges. So basically, I'll just be walking everyone through that, and then we're gonna have like I think maybe towards the end, that's where we're gonna do like a quick story of how I got into Snowed, and yeah, we can have a Q&A session there as well. But yeah, can I then get started, Mr. Pashoko?
I beg you, sir?
Oh, now I was asking if I can get started with the presentation.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Oh, cool, cool. No problem. So yeah, the title of the presentation is Your First Lines of Code in Software Engineering and Building Secure Systems. So one fun fact that I basically got to learn quick, when was it? It was 2 days ago, was that there are over 8,000 programming languages, but HTML is not one of them. So yeah, that's a very crucial one for the people who are still thinking that HTML is a coding language. But yeah, nonetheless, my name is Providence Mtsweni from Fort Lotus. I grew up there, and basically, I'm a proud Snowdian and the junior software engineer at Snow Technologies, which is basically where I spend most of my time working on backend APIs, databases, and building secure systems that are focused on basic security. So yeah, you'll find me on my machine with the terminal open, pretending to be doing something important, but I just simply run the man-man command to confuse everyone. Nonetheless, I also wanted to share like my daily tool set, which is all of these tools right here. So we have Obsidian, which is what I use for documentation, have Fedora, which is a Linux operating system that I'm running on. And I encourage a lot of people to move on over to Fedora if you're on like any other Linux distro, or if you're using Windows, just try out Fedora. It's really fun. And then I also use Docker. Yeah, right there, I build a lot of APIs, use Stack Overflow from time to time, ChatGPT, all the, what is it, Gemini, AI, and Claude. Basically use a lot of AI, and I'll explain during the session how basically all of that comes in. I use Postman for testing, endpoints, and then Go as my primary go-to programming language, as well as Python as well. So all of these are my daily tool sets, which means I go through each and every single one of these tools just to get my work done. And yeah, so a uh, quick brief history of how I got into Snowed. Let's even go further than that. So my first line of code was written in CSS, which was a very big mistake because It was in 2019 when I wanted to learn how to code. And I just basically went on to Google and just searched coding languages beginner for beginners. And then it showed me different languages. And then I chose CSS because I thought that would be like the simplest one. And yeah, I just started learning from reverse. Instead of learning HTML and then CSS first, I learned CSS and then HTML, which, yeah, it was a very tricky situation. But yeah, I just told myself that one day I'll start learning, and then I eventually picked the wrong language. But yeah, after graduating matric, I then went to study sound engineering. So literally right after graduating matric, I registered to study sound engineering. And then I got accepted within like a week of applying. And then I decided, yeah, this is going to be me. That's what I'm going to do. But within that whole journey of trying to study to be a sound engineer, there were a lot of things that basically were drawing me to tech or just the tech industry. So I was then invited by a friend of mine who we went to high school together to attend a hackathon that was hosted at UNISA. So the hackathon was hosted by Geek Culture. It was a Build for Democracy hackathon, which was my first hackathon. It basically convinced me to attend the hackathon by telling me that there will be food. And yeah, that's when I was, that's when I knew I'm basically coming through to the hackathon. And through that experience, my first hackathon, this was in 2022, I actually got to learn a lot about um, different things that basically happen within the tech industry and seeing all these people, like, because I came in with the skills of HTML and CSS, and people there were already working on frameworks and all these CI/CD things, security, and I was just like, yeah, this is a really great place to just see ideas come into reality, right? So then I started attending more hackathons from that what is it, the Build for Democracy hackathon that I went to the first time, which we eventually won. And then I went to a couple of more hackathons until eventually I ended up at the SS23 hackathon, which is basically where I got my internship to start working at Snowd. So we came in at third place. It was a really incredible hackathon. I won't lie. Working on the challenges was it was really fun because it's something completely different from what I was used to. So, like I said, when I started, I was basically using HTML and CSS to build like basic websites. And then, firstly, I was introduced to um, JavaScript frameworks and how all of those come together, right? So basically, right here, we're building a foundation. And then eventually, as you attend more hackathons, you start to picture now, okay, this is how these things come together. This is how all these systems are built. And then when it came to the Security Summit hackathon, I was literally completely mind blown because that was the first time we ever had to deal with something that is not coding. So I always thought that hackathons, you have to come in with the mindset of just solving a problem using code. But there's also a way to solve problems without using code, but just to make things secure. So now, when I started the journey at Snowd, um, there's basically a few uh, things that I had to learn because now I'm coming in as a self-taught, and that's basically what I'll be walking everyone through on the next slide, uh, which is basically building the foundation. So when it comes to building the foundation is now, okay, I studied sound engineering. I started coding using the wrong, I started learning the wrong language, or basically the wrong tool, which is CSS instead of HTML. And I was basically continuously learning throughout my journey. So now these are the things that basically define the foundation that I had to build to become at the place where I'm at, which is you have to understand the technical skills of programming, first of all, which is you need to understand basic programming concepts like variables, data types, control structures, loops and conditions, functions. object-oriented programming, there is so much that you need to understand. And the reason why you need to understand all of these programming fundamentals is that this will become your daily tool set or your primary tool set to start working on general purpose code that basically provides a simple service. So yeah, when I started at Snowed, I was thrown into backend. And yeah, that's when I actually had to learn all of these skills. So programming fundamentals. And then you also have to learn about the data structures and algorithms, which is very critical and something that I'm currently learning myself and continuously learning. You need to understand how data structures and algorithm helps you choose the right tool and technique to solve the problem. You need to know which algorithm works for which scenario, especially when it comes to now scaling large code or handling large amounts of data. You need to understand how data is stored, how data is, yeah, how you can access that kind of data. So then we also have databases. You need to understand databases, how to store, retrieve, and manage all of that. Basically, this is the key for if you're dealing with any data at all. And networking, which is very crucial because at Snow Technologies, we are a network facing, basically we protect devices that are connected to the network. So then that means anything that has an IP address, we need to protect. So we need to understand how these devices all communicate with each other. So there's a lot of concepts when it comes to networking, but what I like about networking itself is that all of these all of these concepts and all of these terms that we basically, I mean, all of these technologies that we use, they stay the same throughout. So even if you're starting to learn about networking, you have the OSI model, which has always been the OSI model, even in the early days, like the early 2000s, HTTP, DNS, and TCP/IP, all of these technologies, they continue to stay relevant even throughout. So I know that there's a lot of like rumors that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs, which is, yeah, I would like to think that yes, it's true, but to some level, it's not. And the people who are going to survive is basically the network engineers because those people always have to be there. There has to be a person who needs to connect the cable from the switch to the server. So yeah, that's something that I'm constantly thinking with you now. Not everyone's going to get replaced by AI. So yeah, lastly, when it comes to building a foundation on your technical skills, it would have to be security. The reason I put this last is because so when you think about security, it's usually it should usually be the first thing. But the reason I put it last is because it covers a lot of things and covers each and every single one of these. If you don't understand programming fundamentals, then whatever you build using your programming language is not going to be very safe. If you don't understand how to use data structures and algorithms, you're also not going to be using, I mean, there's going to be security flaws. If you're using the wrong databases, it's going to be flaws. If you're using the wrong networking, your network is not secure, it's going to be flaws. So hence why cybersecurity is literally the pillar of each and every single thing that is standing there. So cyber, you need to understand there's a lot of concepts and this is just a brief uh, overview. So there's encryption, there's OWASP for building web applications, and then the secure protocols. And yeah, it encompasses a lot of things because nowadays as a developer, like as a junior myself, there's a lot of things that you constantly learn about the threat landscape, which is very scary when you think about it because everything that is connected to the internet is vulnerable and there's a potential of it getting hacked, regardless of however it's standing. If it's not something to do with the version of a system you're using, say maybe you're using um, Microsoft Teams version whatsoever, it gets compromised today, you're gonna have to upgrade to another version. Or you are using, okay, let me not even get into that. Let's move on to the next one. And then, so yeah, we also have the non-technical skills, which are things such as problem solving. And yeah, this problem solving is something that I believe everyone, not just like developers or yeah, software engineers need to know. Everyone needs to understand how to solve problems. Hence why attending hackathons is actually a good space for learning how to solve problems, because when you're there, they expose you to all these um, it basically give you a problem statement, and now you are tasked with figuring out a solution using technology. It doesn't always have to be using technology, but trying to find a solution to an existing problem. So for an example, when it comes to problem solving, you should basically test out different ideas, break it down to its smallest parts. If you have like this big task that you have to do, break it down to the smallest tasks and like a puzzle piece. That way you focus on each piece at a time, and then you form like these small corners. Then you go along the edges, and then you start putting all the puzzle pieces together. Then you're forming the bigger image. Now that's, yeah, basically a concept that I would like to think about every time I have to deal with a very complex uh, technical problem. And then communication, which is something that I always want to improve on. I feel that I don't communicate the way that I would love to, or speak in terms that everyone else would understand. So every time during stand up, I always keep mine very short, brief, and straight to the point. But yeah, there's room for improvement there, but it is something that everyone should have improving their communication skills so that you're able to speak with the seniors about something that you are struggling with. And then paying attention to detail is the next point. So this one is very crucial because a lot of developers fall for, yeah, we fall for a lot of pip kick errors, which is basically the problem lies between the person, the person between the keyboard and the chair, which is, yeah, that's what the abbreviation is for. So meaning the problem is not in the software in itself. The problem is not in the tool you're using, but the problem is you yourself. So the problem existing between keyboard and the chair, which basically that means that it's you. So if, for an example, you building out a URL to test on your local host and you write HTTPS colon for double forward slash and then localhost and then at a specific port, if you know for a fact that you're not supposed to be using that is at the end, like the HTTPS. You know, locally you cannot resolve HTTPS because obviously you don't have a client certificate or HTTP certificate to validate that, yeah, what you're trying to access. Your local host is, yeah. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but for those who understand what I'm saying, yeah, it's basically all these small minor bugs that basically you need to pay attention to detail to. And sometimes it does happen that you completely miss it, which is not a big issue as long as you are able to reach out to the next person. Because I always believe that having uh, two pairs of eyes on the same kind of code base or whatever it is that you're working on, we are always not going to see the same thing. So if Levelhag and I are working on the same tool, and then I'm stuck on a simple error that literally means that I should remove a comma or just add a comma, by looking at the whole code myself, I won't be able to see the code. I mean the error. But if I call in Levelhag, I'm like, yo, bro, what's really happening here? Why am I getting this error? And then he just quickly glances and is like, oh, why do you have a comma right there? And then it all comes back to you like, oh, flip, yeah, I need to remove that. That's it. Then, yeah, sometimes it is kind of tricky because you don't have that pair of eyes and spend the whole day debugging. Yeah, there's a lot of those that I've been through, and yeah, it's not fun. Next in line, we have a continuous learning. So yeah, stay curious every single day. Stay curious, ask questions. If you don't know something, just continue to do research on the problems that you're having, or if you want to learn something new, ask around. So I sit with a lot of seniors around me and I ask a lot of questions. If I'm having like a simple problem, I just go on over to them. Yo, I'm having this issue with one, two, and three. Can you please help me and assist me when it comes to maybe how to approach? Don't allow them to give you the answers because yes, they have the answers, they have the experience, but just how to approach a certain problem. Like recently, I was asking one of my colleagues about how to approach testing for a certain application, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, you can have a look at this tool." So it was something that had to do with monitoring. Basically, it's benchmarking. Yeah, basically benchmarking the performance of your application. So that was something new that I learned, or the tool that they were using was something new that I learned. So I thought, okay, this is really good, something that I can continue to maybe use. And yeah, stay curious.
Do we still have you, Prof? I think your mic is muted.
Hello, am I back?
Yes, yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, where did you lose me? And I lost track.
Right, so please start over from the building secure systems section. I think
Okay,
we
no, I hadn't yet gotten started with that one. Not sure what happened, but you can still hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, cool. So, yeah, moving on over to building secure systems. So, at Snowd, we secure up to 5 million devices across 6 continents, which that is a lot of devices if you think about it. And here I am as a junior developer and I need to protect all of those 5 million devices across all these 6 continents. How exactly do I make sure that I don't write code that is going to compromise our clients? So yeah, in this section, I'll just be walking you through exactly how to go about testing and um, sharing ideas on how to secure your apps, services, and systems as an engineer. So the first tool is, or the first point is to always consider security. So I would always advise that if you haven't thought about security, if you haven't started thinking about security before you start coding, then don't start coding because that will lead you to a lot of potential threats in the future. You should always consider security before writing your first line of code and understand what could be compromised or affected if a security, if it's a, yeah, if there's any potential threats or vulnerabilities. So another thing that you should always look out for is basically testing for failure. So I understand that as uh, as engineers or developers, it's easy to just test for functionality because if you know that my app is supposed to just open and do this, then if if you test for failure, now you're trying to figure out what would happen if something unplanned would happen. So I never used to understand why this was very important. But once you start to see your service throwing errors you've never seen before, trust me, you wouldn't want to like to see those errors at all, and you would do everything to make sure that you don't see those errors again. So to approach this, you have to figure out a way of testing your service or your app to basically try and break it. So I'll quickly show you an example. Excuse me. And yeah, so when it comes to testing, always go beyond just testing for functionality. When you're testing, just test to break your service. And this will help you know what to expect and all the kinds of errors that your service can throw so that you are not surprised when your PR has been merged into main and your service now starts throwing errors in the client's environment. Uh, Lastly, defend against common threats, which basically would be the results. If you don't test for failure, then you won't be you won't be defending against common threats, which is basically making sure that you limit the access of the service and who and how it can be accessed over the internet. I think I did not finish that sentence over there. But yeah, now that you understand what would happen when you break your code, you need to handle all the potential errors that may cause your service to be affected by bad actors or even user error, because we don't always expect the user to use your service or your app the way that it's supposed to. Because or not the clients will never use the service how they're supposed to. So I just want to quickly show you a demonstration of how this would then apply. So say we want to build an API that takes in documents. So for an example, I just want to put everything up in a scenario and quickly demonstrate how to apply all of these concepts. So say now you finished working on an API service that you will integrate with your online banking app that takes in uh, documents via an API endpoint. So say these are CSV documents and your API server basically allows for CSV file uploads via post request. So now once you've uploaded or you request, basically send a post request to this API server. Your service needs to now pass the file, reading all of that data, and then displays whatever it finds over your dashboard. So now in this scenario, let's say that this is CSV data that contains your monthly spending. Now your service will allow file uploads via post, and then the passes, excuse me, and yeah, your API service then needs to pass the CSV file to retrieve your monthly spending data and aggregate your data to your banking app. Then that way it plots all the data and all the data trends of your monthly spending on a fancy looking dashboard. Yeah, on your banking user profile. So now in this scenario, where would a security flaw or where would a security flaw lie in such a nice working system? We know that, okay, we want to basically update our banking profile just to see how we've been spending for the past month. All we need to do is just upload a document a CSV document that contains all of our spending to the endpoint of the service, and then we need to see all of that. So in this scenario, we need to then think, okay, if this is the result that we are expecting to see, the data being shown in graphs and plotted nicely on a dashboard, how then are we going to verify that the document that we're sending in is a CSV file, and how do we then handle those files? So who is allowed to make the request to that endpoint, and who is allowed to view the data from the dashboard, right? So that's when then you would have user permissions and figure out exactly how you're going to leverage having to lock your endpoints behind user specific accounts. So if Lebo and I share the same endpoint, for an example, if Label and I share the same endpoints, I don't want to start seeing Label's trends on my side, on my banking profile, because that's basically showing me false data. And then if I upload it, affects Label as well. So yeah, that doesn't really work well. So you need to understand exactly how you can secure that endpoint. Is it available for everyone? Is it available for the user? If the user uploads a wrong file, then what happens? So the next thing when it comes to testing for failure and then defending against common threats. So these two go hand in hand, because if you don't test for failure, then those flaws or vulnerabilities that you have in your system will be used against you by bad actors to produce an error that may potentially leak some data from your it can either leak what is it, critical client information. It can either leak a piece of your code or just give you the whole code base and understand how your API works so that they can further break it and reveal where this data is being stored. So, excuse me. So now when testing for failure, we need to intentionally break the service to see what we can get back from it. So like in the previous example, when we can try to upload, say maybe now we have a different document. So we have this um, let's say this is a PDF document. So we know that our API only allows in CSV documents, right? But what happens when you upload a PDF? What happens when you upload a CSV file that's empty? What happens when we upload multiple files at once? So do we get an error, and what kind of error are we getting as well? Like, is it just going to be a basic status 500, or is it going to be a status code for 400? Like, how are we handling that error? I don't just want to throw a status code 500 here and then not specify exactly what's going on. So if I know exactly, okay, we're handling all of these issues here, right? So if say now Lego goes ahead and tries to upload a PDF document to the API that only takes in CSV, it should say you try to upload a PDF document, a required document should be CSV. That way, we're specifying what the error is, right? So that it's easy for the person to know as a user what kind of error you're facing. Okay, then that's when you verify, okay, that's the wrong file. Then you go ahead and change the file that you're using to a CSV. And that's how then you can correct all these small things. And then say maybe I then go ahead and try to upload a CSV file, but now this is a 5 gig CSV file. What does that do to the service? Just try to figure out all these small patterns and irregular, irregular patterns that would then try by all means to break the system. So if I try to upload this 5 gig file, it might overload the system memory and it not go through. It might just continuously run through maybe for even hours and then eventually give me an error. It might just not accept the file at all. So if you add all these security measures on your API, it will then continue to just work for the good of your, basically on how you apply your security to defend against common threats, because it is easy for bad actors to understand how a system can fail, and especially if they are trained to break systems. So yeah, and then lastly, I wanted to point on AI. So yeah, the heading for this one is not vibe code, but vibe tutor. So it's easy for us to just throw in code into, or basically just go onto ChatGPT and ask it to build something for you. But then what are we expecting from that output? Is that going to be something useful? I do remember seeing something in the group chat where they mentioned basically vibe coding is basically like vibe coding is basically vulnerability as a service, providing vulnerability as a service, because you don't really know what you're copying. And also, if you're just copying without reading the code, it's not going to make any sense to you. And if there is further, um, if there's further testing on that code, you will find a lot of flaws. So basically, these are the three main ways that I would encourage everyone to just use AI, which is use AI to simplify complex coding concepts. This will then make your learning experience much more easier. You can basically break down hard tasks into smaller problems or simplify them into scenarios that are related to the problem that you're trying to solve. because that way I feel like you're going to get a bit more out of what you're trying to understand. I personally use this a lot more than, yeah, I use it a lot every single time if I'm not understanding something. Just ask it to explain it to you like a 5-year-old. Just try by all means to not just take in code and put it in there. Another thing is if, for an example, I'm at Snowed and then I take this chunk of code that I don't understand, say maybe this code is like 500 lines, I throw it into ChatGPT. I'm like, yo, help me solve this. By doing that, I've just given ChatGPT training data based on the service that I'm using or service that we are building at Snowd, which is that is not a very good thing to do because now you're providing ChatGPT or the people who own ChatGPT a piece of your code and you're showing them this is what we're working on. And they continue to train their models to work on all of these things. And we truly never know where all of that data really goes. So we can never be sure what there is going to be done with the code that we provide all these large language models. And yeah, another one is use AI to automate simple and repetitive tasks. So I'm not sure if you guys saw in the first few, yeah, one of the first few slides where I was showing you my, uh, yeah, my tool set. So one of the things that I have up there is a tool, what is it, an app called Obsidian, which is basically a documentation tool. Whenever I'm writing any documentation that has to do with work or even some of my personal projects, I first jot it down there. So I have basically two different copies. I have a copy that's written by me, and then I have another modified copy that is written by AI. So use AI to make your documentation process much more simpler, or even for it to use the fancy English that basically simplifies things and makes your words kind of stand out in a way that is very unique and also making things connect for yeah for you to understand exactly how your document what your documentation is trying to say, because I'll be honest there and tell you that when I'm documenting, I write how I think, but I would not like for other people to read my documentation how I think, but I would like for people to read my documentation based on how it will help them and assist them. So yeah, another thing is it also helps you free up time for automating simple tasks. Say you want to write a bash script or basically create a cron job that ups a different service at a specific time or checks the status of a service and then gives you a response to that. You don't manually have to like now go and set this thing all up by yourself and trying to figure out how to write bash scripts. You can just throw it into ChatGPT and be precise with your prompting. So if you know how to prompt properly, then you'll get proper output. Because if you just throw garbage in, you're gonna get garbage out. That whole concept just goes to say that if you give it garbage, then it's gonna give you garbage in response. That way, you must always check and analyze what you're getting back from ChatGPT. Don't just copy and paste, which is the last point that I'll be touching on. And yeah, won't need to, you won't learn anything if you just copy and paste and then expect things to run. Like what is supposed to be happening? Are you just allowing your prompt or what is your response, the response that you're getting back from ChatGPT to determine what happens in your machine? You need to analyze the code because there are such instances where there's AI poisoning or large language model poisoning, where you may think that you're using the correct AI large language model, and you keep prompting it for a project that you're currently building. But without knowing, you may be just taking in malicious code that basically deletes everything on your data. So there is such an instance. For those who are interested, I will share the document with you. It's an article that basically speaks on a large language model that basically gives you false information or false code that when you run on your system, basically compromises your system. So yeah, you should be very careful when it just comes to copying and pasting. Also, focus how on understanding how and why. So understanding how and why this thing works, basically you need to know what exactly is happening line by line. Hence why whenever I'm prompting something and I'm struggling with the piece of code, I would tell it, hey chat, generate a quick JavaScript function that does one, two, and three, and please comment what it does line by line. Hence, then I would then be able to understand, okay, it then produces the function, also adding the comments, meaning it includes the comments in each and every single line of the code so that I'm able to analyze and understand what is happening between each and every single line of code to just figure out if it's doing what I'm telling it to do or doing whatever it wants to. And then lastly is use AI to explain and debug. So this one, I feel like it works really great if you want to debug and explain how your system may be compromised or how your system can be flawed. So if we go back to the previous slide here, if you don't understand exactly how to go about testing your application. So for my example here, we had an API server that basically passes CSV files. But if I'm a person who doesn't really know exactly how my service can be compromised, I can then just find out what's okay. Go to ChatGPT, ask it, yo, how can an API be compromised? And then you just basically give a brief description of what your API does and look at the response, analyze it very carefully, see if there are any, excuse me, see if there are any key points that it's mentioning that applies to your scenario that you can take away and apply to your current existing project. And that way you'll be able to just break things down, make them work for yourself. And at the end of the day, you're getting to do something that will basically help you protect or defend against, protect your system against common threats. And yeah, that is it. So basically, that's all that I have, which, yeah, we covered building a solid foundation in programming and, yeah, the technical skills and the non-technical skills, and then building on security, which is basically how to apply how to apply security when building your systems or services. So yeah, that is it from my side. If anyone has any questions, please you can go ahead and open your mics. That is it from my side. Thanks.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. I don't know if anyone wants to open up their mic and ask a question. Going once, going twice. Sold. Okay. I have a question. The PDF situation. There was a
All right.
PDF that I heard. It really didn't sit well with me, and I am so afraid of opening any PDF that has come to me over the internet. Please explain again how do they do this? You know, how they hack you with a PDF file.
So with the PD, I remember we talked about this during when was it? During the ideathon, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So with that scenario, hold on. If I'm not wrong, there was a week where, like, okay, I'm forgetting the app that was compromised using a PDF file, but that was because these guys were using a outdated version of I think it's it was PHP. Yeah, they were using a version of a parser, an old version of a, yeah, what is it, PDF parser or something like that. Basically reads
Okay.
a PDF file. And because I'll say in this scenario, let me just try to make it simpler. So there's a company or an app that basically provides a service,
Mm-hmm.
and they allow you to make file uploads using PDF, right?
Okay.
So now that you've uploaded your file via PDF, you're supposed to get a result back, right? But in this instance, it happened that the bad actors somehow knew what version of parser that they were using for the service. So they then just and there was a CVE that basically came out for this. It was recent, and I think I told you about it if I'm not wrong. So basically that parser was outdated, and they then basically wrote malicious code inside the PDF document, which once the parser starts reading through, it's gonna break, right? So meaning
Mm-hmm.
now the function that needs to read the data is going to fail. And by that failing, it then compromises that app by revealing what kind of, like it reveals information inside the system. So yeah, PDFs are PDFs are very vulnerable. Like you should just question, why is this a 50 megabyte PDF? PDFs are not supposed to be that large. Like
So
there could be hidden malware inside of a PDF.
so just because you're like a lot of us here are students,
Yeah.
and textbooks and the textbook situation.
Mhm.
What do I do when I have like a textbook with 150 pages and is like 300 megabytes?
Oof.
That's something I should question.
Question that there's a lot of scanners that you can try using, but 300 megabyte PDF is, oof,
Is my
what are you doing with that?
If I show of like a thumbs up, how many of us here are sitting with a PDF that's over 200 megabytes?
Okay, I want to see this.
Just by thumbs up.
Lit. Okay, I'm seeing one
I'm seeing
person.
one. Yeah, apparently we have to question that. I have one too. A couple of them
Wow.
at that. But yeah. So another thing. So for
Mhm.
us software developers, do you support the idea that thinking offensively will help us build more secure systems? So I must think about how am I going to hack my system before I start building my system. Does that mentality work in your experience?
I think that's a great mindset to apply when it comes to actually working on anything. Hence why I said before you even start your first line of code, think about what you're trying to achieve and how it could be compromised or even it could be hacked, or yeah, how is it that this API that we're building can reveal something about the code in itself, can reveal something about the database, can reveal something that has to do with how we're doing things on the inside. Like the whole situation of, we have two user profiles, right? You have your banking profile, I have my banking profile. I don't want now my data to be showing up on your side and your data to be showing up on my side. So um, if you apply the mindset, like you said, of a bad actor, then you are able to figure out where you can draw the line to say, okay, maybe specific users, like you should apply, what is it, roles. Assign people specific roles. Not
Mm,
anyone can access certain documents. Not everyone can access your profile. Only you are allowed to see your profile, even if there's an admin who is in charge of everyone's account, but they cannot log in onto your account to see what's happening. So
mm,
yeah, it's something that you should always apply whenever it comes to building a system, because at the end of the day, you're not always expecting the user to use your system or service the way it's intended to be. Some
mm,
people may just break your system unknowingly, and then there's people who do that for a living because it it basically helps them make money, I guess,
It helps.
compromising big companies and corporate companies
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Uh, Another question. Any other questions in the Q&A? I see nothing. There we have Becky. Please open up your mic and speak, sir.
Okay, Providence.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if you also work with the application security. I just wanted to find out what layers, just on explain on the surface level, what layers of
Mhm.
security do you implement, like to provide security for applications like your F&B app,
Yeah.
your just your normal applications.
So like web applications in this scenario.
Yeah, we can say maybe
Oh.
web applications. Which layers of security, like just on the surface level, does one have to implement just to secure
Mm.
the application?
So which layers? I would say all layers. Like, okay, I know that's a very vague answer, but you need to apply security from the networking layer. So if you look at the OSI model, right, you have all these 7 layers of how your data basically moves from the physical to the data, what is it? The data layer, networking layer, all the way up until the application. So you need to apply security from where your data comes in. So from the networking endpoints, because I don't think there's any way if you have an app to be, if you have an app, I don't believe that there's a way that you can apply security on the physical layer because that would have to mean you are physically disconnected or somehow have a filter for malicious network activity happening. But I would say, excuse me, so from the networking point of view, who is allowed to access your app, right? And where are they coming from? Okay, if you see an IP from an unknown like an unknown location, say this app that you've built is only built for people who are in Gauteng, but now you see an IP from China, Russia, or any other place that you have not authorized for this IP to come in and you see it traversing into your network and accessing your app, then you should have security from the networking layer all the way up until your application layer. So you should also apply user permissions, right? There should be user specific permissions and role specific permissions. So who is able to access the app? What can they see? If I'm an admin, what can I do? What can I see? And there's a lot of concepts that you need to think about when it comes to building like a secure system. But the best tool that I would advise you to have a look at is the OWASP top 10, which basically provides you with like a list of open source vulnerabilities that you can like apply into building your application.
Okay, sorry, what's the name
I'm
of the
not
tool
sure.
again?
Hold on, it's called OWASP. That's OWASP, OWASP top 10.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what you've just explained, I don't know if it's almost the same as conditional access, because I did some a bit
Conditional
of,
access.
yeah,
Okay.
a bit of Microsoft Azure. And then when it comes to security, they talk about something along those lines of conditional access, meaning for you to
Mm,
access certain applications, you need to be inside, for instance, inside the corporate network. You need to be inside let's say, the country, like you said.
mm,
You need to be using, let's say, a VPN that is provided by the corporate as well. So those are the conditions.
mm. Yeah. That also applies. That also very much applies. And another thing that I wanted to add is very crucial, but make sure that you're using if you're building this thing yourself, make sure you're not using outdated systems or updated software. For an example, there was an issue with the React, I think it was, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the React framework for building apps was vulnerable, and there was a CVE that came out earlier this year. It should have been last month, if I'm not correct. Yeah, it came out
Yes,
and basically, oh, you remember it?
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
it
always
was on.
keep your software up to date.
Is it Next.js, the framework? I think.
Mm, it was React. Is there like a React for building apps?
Yes, React Native.
Yeah,
There's React
React
Native
Native. That's the
and
one. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, there was also one for the web framework, Next.js. Something on the middleware. I don't know. People could access
Yep.
protected data through the middleware,
Yes,
even
sir.
though you're being blocked out. Thank you very much, Providence. I've learned a lot.
No problem.
I've learned a lot. I really have. Are
Yo,
there any more
Boma, what's
questions?
up? Yeah, are we ending? I just walked away for 5 minutes and already ending. I've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
Please, sir.
Yeah, I want to touch on breaking into the industry. So, Providence, you said you went to the hackathon and you got third place, and based off that, you got an offer from Snowed. So, what did you build at the hackathon that got you that offer?
Okay, thanks for that question. So at the hackathon, we were working on multiple challenges. So we did the capture the flag challenge, which we had to do the PCAP challenge. Basically, the PCAP challenge is now analyzing a PCAP file using Wireshark, which has a lot of traffic coming in and out. And now you need to know exactly which you needed to identify a malicious IP from that PCAP file and actually see what it's sending. So when they give you a PCAP file, it has lots and lots of connections that are happening all at the same time. Basically, it's a packet capture of a network that has a lot of traffic that's flowing through. So meaning if your machine is speaking to the printer, it shows that traffic there. If you're connecting to any HTTP server, it's logging everything on the PCAP file. So we had to first find the malicious IP, figure out what was being sent over the connection that was established. And then we also had to do a bit of decoding to understand if it was like a hash that we had to decode to figure out what kind of a hash is this. It was an MD5 hash. And then if you throw that into VirusTotal, it then tells you, oh, you're looking at this, and this is some ransomware or this is some malware that runs on systems to compromise your machine, something like that. But yeah, we did 4 challenges in total. The first one was a PCAP file. The second one was cross-site scripting, which is basically protecting for trying to prevent cross-site scripting, which is when bad actor now just scrambles your website using cross-site scripting, basically scrambling things around on your website. The third one we had to do was malware analysis. So that was the trickiest one. And yeah, we had 4 challenges. I'm not remembering the fourth one very well, but yeah, we completed all the 4 challenges and we captured all 4 flags. And that's what actually got us, or basically me and my team, that's how we then got to win. But I must say, presenting or building a report is what was tricky because having no experience whatsoever to how a report looks like or how to even go about building a report for all these findings that we've made and just trying to figure out how we can sell this idea. We know that we have all of these things that we found, but then how do we convince the judges that this is actually something you can use to protect your system? Like, okay, we found this, it does this. How then do you paint a picture for them to say that this is what could happen if you just let this thing go and don't really invest the time into figuring out how you can get rid of it or yeah, mitigate all those issues.
Yeah, I appreciate the answer, man. You know, you said you came into the hackathon knowing only HTML and CSS, but you walked out the winner. That's quite a big jump, or that's quite a big gap. Um, what happens there in the middle? Are you learning at the hackathon? Is your team helping you out? What is happening with the information gathering, with the knowledge acquisition? I mean, just just simply devil's advocate over here, when somebody says all they know is HTML and CSS, you don't expect them to win the hackathon. So if you can just dive into that a bit more. Thanks.
True. Thanks. And yeah, that's a very great question. And so to answer your question on the first part, you mentioned when I came into the hackathon, I knew HTML and CSS. Yeah, that's all that I knew at the time. But there was a period before the hackathon where I actually did a certificate with Google. It was Google Cloud. What is it? Google. It was something related to networking, basically. Something related to networking with Google. I completed that in 2022 after my very first hackathon. And then a few months went by, I then went to the SS23 hack. So not knowing any proper frameworks or JavaScript and whatsoever, and everything that I had built previously was just plain static HTML and CSS stuff. I then had to start learning myself, okay, how do all of these frameworks work? Um, got introduced to JavaScript, started learning on the side. And then when we got to the hackathon with the previous knowledge that I had from the certificate that I got for networking, but it was under Google, just not remembering the name very, very well, but it was a fundamental certificate in networking. Um, with that knowledge coming into the hackathon, it then helps you understand all of these concepts that I was learning previously, which is the OSI model. But if I'm honest, their OSI model is very strict. So on the full OSI model has 7 layers, but on theirs they had 5 layers, which basically starts from they don't count the physical and the data link layer. They basically start counting from networking, going all the way up until application. But yeah, it was very fundamental based kind of knowledge, and they also touched on a bit of security. So coming into the hackathon, I had a bit of experience with, well, a bit of theory on how things work, and now we had to do some practical analysis. So I was not very new to the environment of analyzing a PCAP file because I had done that previously. And then also the concept of using a terminal, which was at the hackathon, I had never run a proper, what is it? Linux distribution on my machine before. Everything that I did was on the Google server labs and stuff like that. So coming to the hackathon and having to install a Linux distribution and having to analyze malware and figure out how this thing is working and how it's basically what is it, capturing data. So with all that knowledge then coming into the hackathon, it just made things much more easier to understand how things work, how the whole networking part of things come along. And yeah, honestly, if we did not do the blue team challenge or the red team challenge, I do not think we would have walked away winners there. It was just something that I noticed. If we decided to go, so in the hackathon, there's 3 challenges: is red teaming, blue teaming, and then the secure innovation. If we did the secure innovation challenge, I do not think we were gonna walk away winners at the hackathon, but it happened that we did. So grateful for that.
Thanks for that answer, man. You see that provides much more context, and a bit more direction for everyone who's wondering, how does somebody just make such a big jump? So I think that's what I was looking for, because in the beginning I was confused. Oh, this guy only knows HTML, CSS, and then ends up winning the competition? How does that work? So just that bit of context, changes the entire landscape of somebody who's asking themselves these questions. So yeah, thanks, man.
Lovely. Lovely. Do we have any more questions? It doesn't look like we do. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it was an amazing afternoon. And I also hope I learn CSS and then I get hired. That's somewhere. I don't know. What do you think, Prof?
Go for it, bro. Trust me, it works. It works. Sometimes you
Nice.
got to learn things in reverse and then they'll work out.
Baby, Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending. This would be the end of our meet.
All right. Cheers, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Appreciate
Cheers.
it.